Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Stellium Astrology podcast. I'm Stephanie James, your host. I'm the founder of StelliumAstrology.com, and I'm also the former horoscope columnist for Elle Magazine UK, as well as being an occasional tutor for the London School of Astrology. And over the past couple of weeks I've been talking to you about the kind of astrology in action and how to sort of watch as the day unfolds and see how events occur as you bump into people or witness events that actually show up in an astrological sense, whether it's triggering your natal chart or it just happens to be in the air. For example, sometimes I will, before I go on a drive, I'll have a look and I'll see, like, if there's if Mars is in Aries and it happens to be seems to be quite prominently placed during my journey, like maybe it's sort of around the midheaven, I'd say to Chris, there's probably going to be a lot of boy racers on the road, or like it's going to be a little bit of a few dickheads on the road, basically. I usually say it's going to be a few dickheads on the road, and usually, like, you see what you can keep your eyes peeled for, and maybe even see a lot more red cars than anything else, that kind of thing. So it's like the planets are constantly creating a tapestry for us, like a very beautiful dance, and each of the planets has a little thread attached to it, and they speak to each other, and they're constantly weaving this beautiful tapestry. Now, I think Deborah Holding, I don't know if it's her quote, but I'm quoting Deborah Holding saying this. Deborah Holding is the principal of the traditional school, the School of Traditional Astrology, where I studied horary astrology and horary and electional. And I believe Wade Caves, who I've had as a guest on the podcast, has actually been a teacher, or is a teacher at that school as well. Now, Deborah said, what was it she said? She said that, astrology is like the tapestry, but understanding the nuances, and really understanding, how the planets move, allow us to embellish the tapestry with beautiful bits of golden thread. Along those lines, that's what she said. I believe it was a Deborah Holding quote, and it wasn't just a random, or like it wasn't somebody else. But it's true, we can understand the overall picture, but actually when it comes to, really getting into the details with understanding the planetary movements, we can really paint a very clear picture. If you can hear cars around me, it's because I'm in my car again. I'm going to have to rename this podcast to like driving with Steph or something, aren't I really? Or car park loitering. Hashtag not dogging. I don't know how catchy that is. Maybe I've just created a new hashtag. Hashtag no dogging. Don't do it. Don't do it. Oh dear. Oh, he's had a little cough. He's had his second little nap today, actually. Third little nap, actually. So anyway, yeah, what I wanted to do today was just to point out another way you can observe what's going on. Now, another way of doing this, now this is a fun one, is to look at what's going on in the newspapers and on the TV. So programming and whatever goes out in the newspaper is going to be telling us a lot about what's happening. Astrologically, the stories are going to be, at the moment we're hearing a lot about people in Ukraine, and we're talking about kind of doing what we can to, like, humanitarian aid and rescuing victims, basically. And if you think about the fact that in a mundane sense, as I've explained, mundane astrology is about the bigger picture, the huge picture, the anima mundi, which is like, the world picture. And actually what we're looking at is Neptune and Jupiter coming together in the skies for the first time in 12 years at least. But in Pisces, they haven't done it for a very, very, very long time. I keep on talking about this and I don't have the actual time frame. It's very annoying, I know. I did look it up when I was on my astrology software on my laptop, and I just don't actually have all the dates to hand, so annoyingly again. But yeah, it doesn't happen very much in Pisces. But obviously Pisces is the sign of the victim or the saviour. And we have Neptune, which can see itself as a bit of a saviour type sometimes, but also can be a symbol of victimisation. And Jupiter coming along, who, you can almost imagine the centaur galloping in like a knight in shining armour. He's not typically your saviour type, but he does blow things out of proportion. He is, equestrian, no doubt about it. So if you're thinking about galloping in on a knight like a knight in shining armour. But, Jupiter implores us to find meaning, and, it will magnify the compassionate kind of essence of Pisces. It really magnifies everything that it steps into. So that's going on at the moment, so we're seeing a lot of that in the papers, but there will be other little stories in the paper that tell us about the smaller transits that are occurring. I don't really read newspapers because I am a watery person and I feel very consumed by the stuff that happens in the world, so basically I try to ignore it as much as possible because I don't like to be sucked into stuff that's going to make me feel very helpless and depressed. And yeah, this kind of stuff that's going on with Russia and Ukraine, I would find incredibly difficult to sit by and just not really be able to do much. I'll still do stuff. I will still, save up items and give them to, humanitarian aid for these causes, but I just don't want to know all the details like the papers like they publish. But yeah, you could say that actually Jupiter is publishing the, Jupiter is the sign of publishing and, newspapers and stuff, and putting out this story of these people who have been victimised and who are basically unable to, they're in a very difficult situation at the moment. So it's about that publicising. But you know what? I also think that Neptune's about information going viral and stuff like that. So I think, we'll see a lot more Jupiter-Neptune themes coming up over the next few weeks. I think that the conjunction happens on the 12th of April. But what I wanted to talk about was kind of in conjunction with that. I remember I was watching the film Don't Look Up on Netflix a little while ago, and that's the one with Leonardo DiCaprio and what's her name? The girl from The Hunger Games, Jennifer Lawrence, J-Law. And Meryl Streep's in it. She's brilliant. She plays a very Trumpy type character. And Jonah Hill, who plays her son, who's brilliant in it. Lots of great characters, lots of really brilliant actors and actresses. In fact, I may treat myself to watch it tonight because I really love that film. I like apocalyptic films, and that one is probably one of the best ones I've ever seen. And it's about two astronomers discovering, in fact, Jennifer Lawrence discovering an asteroid on a collision course with Earth. And they've been given something like 3 to 6 months, can't remember how long, to deal with it. And they go to the president and they speak to the president about this terrible thing that's going to happen. And the president's like, oh, whatever. There's always some kind of end of world scenario, whatever. And then just is clearly uninterested and narcissistic, and it's just so brilliant because you're watching it going, what? Why don't you care? And then they go on a news TV show, like a daily news thing, and again it's oh dear, he's talking in his sleep. Are you okay there? He's fine. And and then they don't pay attention either. And so the whole film is basically Jennifer Lawrence and Leonardo DiCaprio kind of losing their mind as time goes on, and both of them coping with the situation in very different ways. And I won't do a sort of spoiler thing. I won't tell you what happens, but ultimately it felt to me a little bit like, this whole Don't Look Up. It just felt a little bit like, and it's kind of about, people not trusting in science and not understanding that that science is carrying a very clear message, and that almost like how things can get really belittled and made into a sort of joke because people aren't prepared to deal with it, and I just felt like it was quite Jupiter and Pisces. Jupiter is very much about looking up and looking beyond. But in Pisces, I know he's in his rulership there, but he's not in Sagittarius where he's in the skies and to infinity and beyond. He's more, he's in the ocean and sort of caught up in the, the emotional and spiritual collective realm. So it felt like a very collective film, and it just felt a little bit like, it was, it was very Saturn in Aquarius as well, because it was all about having responsibility to your fellow man to do something right. But yeah, it just felt very Jupiter in Pisces to me, this kind of disillusionment with reality and not trusting the truth, the real truth, and understanding the consequences, not really taking action when they should have taken action. I know a few Pisceans who will bury their head in the sand and not deal with things until it's right in their face. And that film kind of made me feel like that a little bit about humanity. And a few other things that I think I've noticed lately that kind of make me feel like we're living in these very Piscean, whether it's to do with the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction or just the fact that it's Pisces season at the moment. It's not going to be Pisces season when this comes out, by the way. I'm recording it during Pisces season. So one of the things that occurred was I had myself booked onto a sleep workshop, which I mentioned last week, a sleep workshop for babies, and it kept on getting postponed each week because people had coronavirus, obviously not great. But that was one of the things that, in Pisces season, there's a sleep workshop. And then also during Pisces season, I took Ewan swimming for the first time. And, so you've got this dreamy sleep work, Pisces is connected with Neptune and that kind of anesthesia, that kind of, disconnection from physicality and tangibility. It's very dreamlike, hypnotic. And swimming, like connecting with that watery Piscean thing. And actually it just so happened that when we went swimming, it was the midheaven of the moment, I think, was on Ewan's midheaven at that point. Also I've been in touch with loads of my friends that are musicians lately. I've had lots of reason to be contacting my musician friends. And we're also doing this toy exchange. It's a thing called Whirly. And what you do is you pay a monthly fee, or I've paid for like 6 months, and then you just get toys sent to you, and then you can send them back when you've done playing with them, and then get more toys. It's kind of like a toy library. And I noticed that pretty much all the toys that I'd been getting for Ewan were like musical themed, like music themed, which connecting with that that sort of Piscean, communicating through a medium other than that of language, which is another thing that I thought was quite interesting. And just to really throw something in there, like yesterday I went out wearing a little stripy jumper with an anchor on it. It was only afterwards when I looked and I thought, it's Pisces season, I'm feeling drawn to wearing these clothes. So what I'm saying is, in a very long-winded way, definitely think about what you're wearing, what you feel compelled to wear, what you're attracted to, just the things that are drawing your attention, the headlines in the newspapers, and the little stories in between, and even what's on TV. I remember, I think that it was a time, I don't know if it was like a Mars-Saturn square, or if it was I can't remember now if it was it something to do with Mars, Mercury, or Mars? I think something to do with Mars, and I think Mercury and Saturn as well. And I can't remember exactly what the aspect was, but I remember thinking, how is this going to unfold throughout the day? And my mum loves watching EastEnders on TV, which I'm really not a fan of, but she loves the soap. She loves EastEnders and Coronation Street, and they just do my head in. Corrie's not so bad, but EastEnders is just, I can't, it just does my head in. On this particular episode, there was a young girl, and she was talking to her grandfather about playing competitive chess in a tournament. And I was like, the competition aspect is Mars. And I think that chess is, obviously because it's a strategic game, I think Mars and Saturn together are, not necessarily about, feeling pressure and putting the brakes on. Sometimes it's about strategy. It's about slowing down and considering the next move. And I think that's what it was. I'm sure it was a Mars-Saturn square or something. And it was the young girl talking to her grandfather, who's also like the Saturnian figure. And she was saying how she didn't want to do the tournament. He was telling her why it was in her best interest to do it. And I just thought, how funny that even the TV programmes that have been recorded in advance, they've been recorded and they have been scheduled to go out at a specific time on a specific day, will resonate with the planetary movements. Just for an experiment tonight, another homework assignment for you. Sit down and either think about what you fancy watching on TV, or just flick through and see whatever appeals to you, and then think to yourself, what's going on in the heavens right now, and how is this reflected through what I'm consuming? Because often you will find when the moon's in a certain sign, you'll be in a certain mood for something. And just lately, I watched it all. I think I binged it all when I was pregnant, but we started rewatching it just because, sometimes you just want to put something on that's mindless. And we've been watching Bar Rescue with John Taffer, and Bar Rescue is, you could almost say that's like a very Pisces, Neptune in Pisces, Jupiter in Pisces thing. It's making a TV show out of going, and it's essentially like what's that? Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares. It's like that, except it's all about going into bars and like bar science and stuff like that. How to run a successful bar, and lots of them close down. They get John Taffer going, he makes the bar over, and then they end up closing down anyway. But it's just interesting because he does exactly the same thing that Gordon Ramsay does. He goes in, he humiliates people, he makes them embarrassed and ashamed of themselves. He goes over things with a fine-tooth comb, points out where there's poor hygiene, finds the person that's failing, the reason for the failing business, and makes, basically turns the bar around, gives it a makeover, transforms it. Is it any surprise that he's got Sun and Saturn in Scorpio? He's got a couple of other planets as well, I can't remember, but he's intense. The guy is intense. Obviously, Gordon Ramsay has he's got a stellium in Scorpio as well, I think, but he's also got that Virgo stellium too. Anyway, I've always wanted to do a little show on those two, so maybe I will at some point. But yeah, Bar Rescue, again, it's like, about places to go and drink, where, a lot of the time the owners are either alcoholics, or they're like out of touch with reality in some way, or the reality of running their bar, or they don't have, they've just buried their head in the sand and just let things get really bad. And, again, like Virgo is a sign of like meticulous cleanliness and hygiene. Pisces is kind of the opposite of that as well. So you've got that sense of like the kitchen's not being entirely up to scratch, and some of them are pretty horrific as well, actually. Just pay attention to what's on the TV, what you feel drawn to, the films. If you're a gamer, look at the kind of game that you're playing, and think about like what it is about the game that's appealing to you, and then think about like the planetary movements. Look at the clothes you're wearing or you feel drawn to wear, the music that you're currently listening to. It's all out, it's all there. Like, the planets permeate everything. We literally are under the influence of the planets. Oh my gosh, there's this gorgeous little black and white cat that lives opposite us, and is an upstairs cat, I think, like a flat cat, and he likes to sit at the window and look out the window. I'm sure that my cats used to sit at the window and stare back at him sometimes, but he's there looking out the window. I love that cat. But yeah, so that's it really. That's all I had to say for this week's episode. Just like really fine-tuning your observation skills and having a look at how that marries up with the transits. Like I've said, I think a couple of weeks ago, sometimes you can be thinking of somebody, and it'll be that the degree of their sun or their ascendant happens to be transiting the midheaven or rising. There's often when somebody's on your mind. I think I remember one night I was like, on social media, and Paloma Faith popped up. And instead of just scrolling past, I actually stopped and I read about her. And as I was reading about her, I thought, I was thinking, I think that the moon's in Leo right now. I think it's just something, for example, I was like, I think the moon's in Leo, and I was like, I bet she's got planets in Leo. And when I had a look at her chart, I just quickly went online and Googled it. I think she had something like Mars in Leo or something, and the moon was on that degree. So it's really worth like making a note of these things. If you suddenly, a friend that you haven't thought of for years pops up in your mind, and you think, oh gosh, I haven't seen them for ages, write down the time, write down where you were. If you've got astrology software in your pocket, take it out and have a look at that moment, and more than likely that person will have a planet that's triggering the moment, and you are suddenly in touch with whatever it is that is transiting in that chart that's bringing that person to your attention. I think I said to Wade Case when I went to one of his electional astrology classes, an electional astrology is where you elect a date for something like a wedding. I just did one for a party, but you can like elect a date for like when you want to like post a letter. I've done that before, like to get the best outcome and things like that. So it's like choosing the best moment in the future in order to do something to get the best outcome, or the desired outcome more than anything. And I said to Wade, like, we were looking at this chart, his example of some women that had struggled to a lesbian couple, they'd struggled to conceive through IVF, and the one who was having IVF was not was running out of eggs or something like that. And every single chart that he pulled up regarding the consultations with this couple, and I won't ruin the story, there's so many details in that story, but every single chart that he pulled up, there was a particular degree that was populated by one planet, at least every single time. There'd be a planet on that degree in the chart. And I said to Wade, it's like each degree carries some kind of essence that requires to be observed whenever a planet tunes into it, or when an angle tunes into it. So people equally can represent that essence that requires to be expressed. And so when you are sitting there thinking about somebody, and then you look at the chart of the moment, and it just so happens that their sun is on the midheaven, if you happen to know their chart, or if you don't, if you just know their birthday, you can just cast their birthday without knowing much else and just have a look at roughly what is where on that day. You suddenly realise, wow, that person means this to me. They're on the midheaven at the moment, and it's like almost even our unconscious thoughts, every thought that pops into our head that you feel like, oh goodness me, it feels as though there isn't much meaning behind it, or it's just random. Every single thing that goes through our heads seems to have some kind of attachment to it, astrologically. Sorry, some sort of shenanigans going on behind me. Anyway, so I suppose I can close it up there and just say thanks for tuning in. Happy Aries season, and I hope you guys are all doing well. And yeah, if you haven't already, if you wouldn't mind taking my phone, please take my phone. Take your phone out of your pocket and rate my podcast on Spotify if that's where you're listening. You just go onto the main podcast page, my podcast page, and there's 3 little dots on a button next to the download button and stuff, and you should be able to rate my podcast, and a few of you have done that already, so thank you very much. Equally, Apple Podcasts, if you could leave me a review and a rating, I would love that too. I'd really appreciate it. If you want to get in touch, if you want to be on the show, you can join my mailing list. You just have to go to stelliumastrology.com and the mailing list is there. You'll get a form to complete, which then I can cast your chart and get you on some episodes. And if you are, you want to contact me directly to have a chat or whatever, my email address is stephanie@stelliumastrology.com, and my name is spelled Stefanie. I'm not Step Hanny, I am Stephanie. Yes, I got picked on at school for that, but whatever. So yeah, contact me. I have lots of people getting in touch. I do try and respond quickly and to everybody. It's not always possible, especially nowadays with my little human being that comes everywhere with me. Yeah, cool. All right, guys. Well, I'll speak to you next time. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll be back next week with another interesting chat. Take care. Bye.